Hello, I'm Philip Stoughton. I'm here at Semicon West and I'm joined by Ranjan from Cimetrix. Ranjan, great presentation. Really interesting to see what you're trying to do to bring together these industries. What do you think are the kind of disruptors that are making these industries need to communicate with each other now?
So one of the key things is the supply chains are getting integrated. So people want the data from the wafer fab all the way to the assembly test to SMT and then finally to shipping, right? So when they have a defect, they can trace it back all the way. So there is a digital trace for all the machines and the parts and everything. So they really want that traceability across the whole supply chain.
Okay, so traceability is one of the big drivers, and then obviously once you have that, you start to share data and you get efficiencies and all those things. It's not just about companies collaborating now, though, is it? It's got to be associations and much more. Tell me how it's working with the associations.
So it's phenomenal because right now, like the SEMI, TPCA, IPC, they're all collaborating with an IME to get a roadmap for the industry, and then all their members are participating to create this roadmap. So it is actually going to be pretty revolutionary for the whole electronic assembly industry. It's a $2.5 trillion industry. So we need that to move them to the next step where you have seamless integration across for data. So right now everybody wants to correct data, but you have silos, they call data lakes, but the lake needs to get bigger where you have all the information from the supply chain in that lake, not a lake for the front end for semi, they're not a lake for just PCB, there's a bigger lake that has all the information. Then you can use big data tools to find that needle in the haystack. If you have a certain defect at the end, you can go trace that back.
Okay, and part of that is connecting everybody together. Now, you know, looking at the SMT industry, there's lots of time being spent on standards, and IPC are moving towards CFX. You have SecGem in the semiconductor industry. Is it possible to bring all these standards together, or will they have to commonly coexist?
So it will happen. What basically could happen, which has happened in other industries when there were multiple protocols. Look at the cell phone industry. In the past, I don't know if you remember, but 10, 15 years back, you had to have a GSM phone, a CDMA phone, a TDMA phone. Then you went to a different country, you had to change your phone. That all changed when Qualcomm came up with the Gobi chip. There was one chip that could do multiple protocols. You reboot the phone and it has a multiple different. You land in Korea, it just does the Korean stuff, you come to go to Europe. That's what is going to happen now. So the software will do, there are lots of guys, including us, that are doing multiple protocols. So whether it's SecGem for this industry or CFX or OPC, it really wouldn't matter because you can abstract that out, and like Android and iOS, you can write one app that is agnostic of the protocol, that does all the capabilities that exist, and then provides it to the app.
Yeah.
I think that's what will happen.
Yeah, and you've done something interesting here in bringing all kinds of different machinery together and connecting them together. What protocols are you using there? Is that an example of what you're talking about here, of being able to process the data in whatever format it comes in and kind of normalize it?
Yeah, that's right. So we actually have brought, this is a semiconductor show, so the SecGem is used quite a bit. So we have a Fuji machine here that has GEM, that is connected using GEM, but we also have OPC, which is on the back of the PLC that's running. So we connected Fuji GEM with OPC, with PLC, and they are all connected to the same platform. So this is like a Qualcomm chip, and then the abstraction at the platform layer where the applications are using this API. So they really, the application doesn't care what platform it is. We are showing that here, and we have a lot of customers that are interested because they have older equipment. So it is not just a matter of protocol, you have older equipment that needs to connect. So we also have a hardware box that does the protocol translator. So it can connect to an old machine and then do SecGem to everything else.
That makes perfect sense. And you know, you start to share data, you start to share vision. Next stage is to share a roadmap, and that's one of the things you were talking about in the presentation you gave with Jabil's Dangamota. Tell me a bit about that roadmap. Who owns that roadmap? How often will it be published? What do you need to get that roadmap really useful to all the people invested?
So the roadmap is being driven by IME because we wanted a forum that is completely across the board, across the electronics industry. So they look at multiple industries, and then we have SEMI joining, we have IPC, we have ETPCA, so all the different associations and then all the members. So we have Fuji, we have Panasonic, we have Amazon, IBM, Flex, Jabil. So they are participating for their verticals, and then there are some that are horizontal technologies like security and big data. So we do that. So everybody's kind of joining and participating and coming up with the roadmap. The key reason we were driving, Dan and I did this, and IME asked us, is when we ask somebody to implement something, so like for big data, for example, they go to an EMS supplier and say, well, we implemented this, but it's a beer manufacturing. But that doesn't help them because they're an EMS company. So right now, what we are trying to do is, there may be similarities between SEMI and OSAT and PCBA, but the CEO of an EMS company will say, okay, how does this apply to my industry? And that's what we are trying to do. So not try to invent something new if it exists, but how it applies to these different verticals. And then maybe a lot of it is common with SEMI. Then we just use those and see how it's vetted across that industry. And then if it doesn't work, then we will try to find new things to do that. So you need to have an implementation roadmap and then a reference roadmap that somebody can take that and try to implement it in their industry.
Yeah, and to be honest, I don't think it's long before EMS companies are making beer anyway. I think when we look at smart manufacturing, it is across all the verticals as well as being horizontally connected.
That's right. That's exactly right. It is. Things are going to be more and more used across the board because technologies like big data, they're applicable on data, and the data is very agnostic. Usually data is very anonymized and agnostic. So once you start putting some wisdom into the data, then it becomes specific to an industry. Before that, a machine data from Fuji versus applied, that's all sensor data. It really doesn't matter. It could be thermostat for all that matters.
Yeah, and that's where it becomes really interesting and really valuable to everyone. Ranjan, thanks so much for your time. Great presentation. Look forward to seeing you again. Thank you.
Thank you.